8. The Principles and Practice of Quackery. Medical Reports Number 7, written May the 24th, 1980. At the beginning of the 1950s, I had a very searching conversation with a treasured friend. Whenever I was in his area, he stayed at his home and we talked until 1 or 2 in the morning. He was almost twice my age. He was a surgeon of national stature and taught at the medical school of a major university. I guided Dr. GC's theological reading. He guided me in far broader fields. One evening, I spoke with great interest of a popular writer on medicine. Paul de Croof was his name, as I recall it, and of the medical miracles he was forecasting. I then commented on the apparently remarkable results a doctor 100 miles away was getting with some of the newest wonder drugs. At first, G smiled, but finally he opened up to me as a friend in need of correction. This other doctor was moving into quackery, he said flatly, and all the new wonder drugs which promised to revolutionize life in the post-World War II era were close to being quack medicines. He asked me to recall the old-time medicine men and their quack medicines. One ad I recall seeing had a long list of ailments which it declared it could heal. The list included tuberculosis, female complaints, rheumatism, impotence, and many, many more things. The difference between a quack doctor and a good one begins with a sense of limitation. A quack medicine and a quack doctor both promise too much. A sound medicine offers limited help for a limited and specific problem. It offers no miracles and works none. It cannot replace good hygiene, sound nutrition, and healthy habits. The wise doctor makes no large promises. He knows how limited his role is, and yet within those limits, very important. The more we demand of a doctor or of a medicine, the more likely we are to fall prey to quackery. Dr. C expressed both skepticism and fear concerning the new wonder drugs. At best, he held, we have only the most preliminary and cursory of reports on their results, effects, and side effects. He was fearful that too great a trust in the new medicines and too uncritical an attitude would turn medical practice into the dangerous vagaries of quackery. To expect too much of doctors and medicine was to leave oneself wide open to trouble, and it was like preferring a Ponzi pyramid scheme to an old-fashioned conservative bank. Not too much later, another fine doctor and friend told me rather wearily one evening that he had all too many unnecessary patients. They came to him daily for wonder drugs, when a little rest and or an aspirin would do them more good. If he did not prescribe one of the newest miracle drugs, they were annoyed, and they regarded him as a doctor who was not up on his medical practice. I thought of these things very much of late, as I regard various accounts of the harm wrought by a variety of miracle drugs, of the ugly consequences of IUDs and the birth control pill, and then Christopher Norwood's article, The Hormone Babies, A Condemned Generation, New York, 13, number 20, May the 19th, 1980, pages 49 to 55. About 10 million mothers-to-be were dosed over a period of years with human sex hormones, including DES, dithiostol. The girls born of such mothers are prone to a rare genital cancer, and the boys to genital abnormalities, including microphallus, according to Norwood and others. The saddest fact of all is that this is but one miracle drug among many. Worse yet, the doctors are the sole villains in the story, and all doctors are equally condemned, the promiscuous wonder drug dosers and non-dosers alike. Even worse, the appetite is for much more quackery. On a recent trip, I sat in an airport waiting room, awaiting the announcements of my flight. Two women behind me were talking randomly and apparently drifted into a discussion of some loved one's illness. Then came a sentence which, of all the talk, alone interrupted my reading and caught my attention. You'd think that the doctors could come up with some medicine to take care of that. People demand quacks and quackery because of their own bad character. As a result, we have quackery all around us, in the church, the school, and in politics. Quackery in the church is not limited to the cults. It is present wherever men offer something short of God's word as the bread of life. In the state schools, we have educators promising us the best kind of education as their stock in trade, while turning out 30 million functional illiterates in America. Politics, of course, is our most fertile ground for quackery because it is, for most people, the central area of life. No old-time medicine man promised as much as our quack politicians: cradle degree of security, health care for all, the abolition of unemployment, and almost anything and everything else one can think of. We live in the golden age of quackery, and instead of merely giving an Oscar to our top quacks, we have been giving them the White House with increasing frequency. Quackery is in great demand. On a plane trip recently, I glanced through a few of the available magazines after completing my planned reading. I encountered a hostile note concerning doctors and a news report on expected breakthroughs with wonder drugs which would, in a few years, solve many problems and give us longer, healthier, problem-free lives. The two items go hand in hand. If you expect miracles from doctors, you will be disappointed, and you will demand quacks, not doctors. Dr. David Ehrenfield, professor of biology at Rutgers University, has described much of modern humanistic and scientific thinking as not only arrogant, but as magical. Modern man is substituting the word magic for science in his thinking and identifying the two. David Ehrenfeld's The Arrogance of Humanism, New York, Oxford University Press, 1978. As a result, he approaches every discipline with unreasonable demands and a belief in the possibilities of total control by man. I recall, shortly after the 1971 earthquake in Los Angeles, listening day after day to the comments of people in checkout lines and elsewhere. One comment was, "Why doesn't the government do something about it?" That is, why doesn't the federal government spend enough money to learn how to eliminate all earthquakes? No doubt the same hope prevails concerning floods, tornadoes, and other natural disasters. One patient, aware that he was going to die, asked of a nurse plaintively, "Can't they do something about it?" Instant miracles are demanded by men when they need them. Thus, we live in an age of quackery. The problem is at heart theological. The theology of all who demand humanistic miracles is that of Genesis 3:5. As sinners, they see themselves as gods, and they want life to move at their behests. The writer Ambrose Bierce married one of the most beautiful women in San Francisco Bay Area. In addition, Molly Day was the daughter of one of the wealthiest men of that part of the state. Not too many years later, in 1888, he left her after discovering that she had kept some letters from a man who loved her, although she had never been involved with him or returned his affections. Life had to be on Bierce's terms, and his wife could not have even a keepsake or thought apart from him. Later, Bierce, fearful of old age, went to Mexico to join Pancho Villa's rebels and die, and he was never heard from again. Life becomes an impossible burden for those who play God. Trifles become crises, and life becomes a continual problem and an unending burden. We are all familiar with people who have everything and are miserable. We are also familiar with people who do not have everything and are also miserable. Such people want life on their terms. If things go contrary to their will, no matter how trifling, they are miserable. They resent a world they never made, and yet the only world any man can live in is God-made, not man-made. Their attitude is, "I do well to be miserable," as though the world will stop in its tracks to satisfy them when the world sees that they are offended. Such egocentricity or sin is a fertile ground of quackery. These men demand impossible things and require that they be given them. It was one of the most successful of all con men, Veal, who said that he never conned any man who did not first of all have larceny in his heart and expected to take advantage of him. They had one thing in mind, their own expectations and satisfaction, not reality. The prevalence of quackery means a departure from reality into fantasy and magic. It means a denial of God's world in favour of the world of imagination. It is no accident that the prevalence of evolutionary thought has coincided with the return and prevalence of magic. Both presuppose a world of chance rather than God's sovereign creation and his law. Magic and evolution enthrone chance and deny any meaning beyond man. If Christianity is weak or wanes, magic and quackery will prevail. Eric von Kuehnelt-Leddihn, in The Intelligent American's Guide to Europe, Arlington House, 1979, describes how a journalist in Iceland attacked him furiously for his religious superstitions, such as belief in Christ's resurrection, the virgin birth, and so on. Half an hour later, the same man whispered to him, pointing through the window of his library, "You see that man there? Beware of him. Several weeks ago, he changed himself into a bull and chased me across the fields." Page 202. Why not? If you believe in chance, you will believe that anything is possible except God, who is the antithesis of chance. The problem of quackery is thus at root a religious problem. The elimination of quackery must begin from the pulpit, and it must be carried out in every field, beginning with the church and politics. The problem, however, is more than an ecclesiastical one. The doctor himself must have a realistic perspective of his role and that of medicine. Medical practice is a calling, and it must be practiced under God. The principles and practice of quackery are magical, although they pass as science, and Christian medical practice must avoid them. Some years ago, in the 1920s, a liberal, non-Christian writer and editor, Kenneth Burke, predicted that the modern world would see a return to a belief in magic and occultism. He did not welcome this. He was simply setting down what he believed was inevitable. His reasoning was clarity itself. Modern man has rejected God and the supernatural. In doing so, he has not rid himself of his hunger for miracles, for grace, and for superhuman power at work in society. This hunger, Burke reasoned, will create an appetite for and lead to a revival of occultism and magic. Men will seek grace and power from below. Let us extend this thinking further. Men have rejected in the 20th century God, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. Having denied supernatural power and authority, they seek to replace this same need by humanistic ones. The political leader in our day succeeds most who invokes a father image and has charismatic qualities. The result is a 20th century proneness to dictatorship, authoritarian politics, and the rule of men rather than laws. Men have transferred their religious devotion from God to their political leaders, and candidates for office set forth a salvationist politics. An atheistic or humanistic populace turns its political leaders into religious leaders, and it pins hopes on the political process which politics can never realize. The result is widespread disillusionment and cynicism. The failure of modern politics is inevitable. It can never deliver what the people demand of it. The more it tries to be what the people try to make it to be, the greater its failure and the resulting disillusionment and bitterness. The same false expectation, disillusionment, and hostility can be found in other areas, notably medicine. One doctor's wife, weary of listening to women patients talk about her husband with unrealistically high faith, said that at times she was tempted to answer, "I think my husband is a very good doctor and a fine man, but I happen to know that he is not God." Exactly. No age is unbelieving. It may be ungodly, but its beliefs are no less intense. They are, rather, falsely directed. It is this false direction which predisposes people to quackery. They expect and demand from everyone, children, husbands, wives, doctors, politicians, clergymen, and scientists, more than they can honestly deliver. They want humanistic miracles. It should not surprise us that the press and the public speak of the post-World War II medicines as wonder drugs. The original and basic meanings of wonder are 1, a prodigy, and 2, something supernatural. Both meanings underlie the popular usage of the word as applied to drugs, and they underscore the falsely religious expectation with which people approach medical aid. Similarly, bionic man is not only a television person, but a popular belief. Few stop to think that bionic additions are inferior. They cannot replace good health and sound health practices. Eyeglasses, after all, are a bionic addition and definitely inferior to good eyes. So too medicine is, like eyeglasses, at times in need, but it is never a wonder. Its true scope is limited though important. The roots of quackery are in false religion and in a humanistic faith in man and man's products.